Okay, here we are already in November, and you guys have started on your argument papers. The first draft of the biggest assignment we will do for this semester, and I want to say just what I've looked at so far, everything's looking very good. You guys have gathered a lot of information. What I'm seeing mostly is that the information is probably making more sense to you as the writer and not so much sense to the reader. But that's pretty typical in first drafts. So don't think of that as a bad thing. Just think of that as something you want to think about as you continue to work on the second and third draft. You've read stuff and you've looked at stuff and you've written stuff, but now think about what you can do to make that information more readily understandable for your reader. Make it easier for your reader to follow on and see what it is you're trying to do. Okay, for this example video, I wanted to thank Lauren for letting me use her paper as an example, and I really appreciate that. So, with this being the first draft, I'm not counting off for everything that I'm going to talk about necessarily here, but I'm going to go through everything that you'll be expected to have in the second and the third, the final drafts, just so that I can point out to you, exactly what it is you're going to need to have your paper look like, and the things you're going to need to add and change and do. Okay, I've got Lauren's paper here, and then here's the sample APA paper from the the Purdue OWL Writing Lab. And if you will continue to use this as your model, then you'll do okay. Okay, now if you look at Lauren's cover sheet, and you look here at the APA sample, you can see here there are some differences. The running head is missing. So over here, if you go to document elements, you can open up the header, and you can pick one. And the running head is usually the first line of the title. So say if you have a title that's got 2, even 3 lines, you'll shorten it a little and just use the first line of the title. So here I'm going to put medieval night. You usually don't use the ands or these. We don't need this. We don't need this. And I think she had the page number, but let me show you how to do that. Okay, the page number is on the right, and so that's where we want it. And so we're going to say okay. Okay, now close that. Okay, so now we've got the running head. Whoops, wait a minute, I did one thing wrong. It's got to all be capitalized. So see, I'm like you guys. I have to make sure to follow it correctly. Okay, now if you look here, it's a very nice looking cover page, and I like how she used the title and the line. And however, if you are following a format, this is not going to work, because if you look at what Lauren's done here, which I really like better in terms of how it looks, but by the APA example, this is just centered, and it's just written in the basic Times New Roman or whatever basic font you're using, and then the university that you're at. So Lauren would need to change, she's got her university, but this should just be the regular 12-point font that she used for everything else. And then notice down here there's an author note. I do want you to put that in there too. The author notes you really intended for somebody who's like a professional and they're sending their paper off to be presented at a conference or to be published in a journal or something like that, but I don't think it hurts for you guys to go ahead and write a little bit about yourself, and because, one day you'll probably be sending your stuff off for a conference or to be published, so we want you to practice that now. And the reason I'm such a stickler at making you follow the exact APA format is one of the really big things that we teach in the freshman writing courses is what you'll need to know how to do for your other classes. And when you do research in your other classes, they're going to have some very specific formats that they're going to want you to follow. And so that's why I'm wanting you to follow this pretty exactly. Okay, now you can see here that Lauren goes into her paper and she did do an abstract. Now, like I said, I'm not counting off for that on this first draft, but that is something you will need to have. The abstract's basically a summary of what the whole paper is about, but you can see it's got the in-text citations. You see those here. This paper examines blah, blah, blah. It gives the main thesis or the main thing that you're arguing. And then you also have keywords. And I think there's ways in Word you can find out which word you use the most. So this would be just your most important words, the words that you use the most in the paper. You can see here they've got 2. 2's enough. 2, 3, 4, 5. You don't want to have too many. Okay, then here's the page where we start. And it's correct here. My header should be showing up. I'm not sure why the header's not showing up, but it should be. Your header should show on every page. Okay, now let's read a little bit here. Man is separated from animals because we think cognitively, but all the cognitive thinking in the world will never rid man of the basic need to survive. Survival has been and will forever be a necessary instinct, because without it the human species will cease to exist. In the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expense of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. This quote from Charles Darwin is a good example on how all animals feel the need to survive and will change in any way to do so. He was the man who coined the phrase survival of the fittest, because it is every species' sole purpose in life to further their own species. Because of this need, as humans, we idolize the physically elite and harness their strengths to wage wars for whatever reasons we may have. Thus, the idea of the warrior was born. A warrior, in my opinion, is the best of the best on and off the battlefield. The medieval knight exudes this concept and has proved it time and again. Okay, let me talk about the content first, and then I'll go back and talk about logistic formatting kinds of things. I like the first part. It catches my attention. I like the use of the Charles Darwin quote, and that we as humans are trying to survive and we wage wars. And then she jumps into, thus the idea of the warrior, she says was born. So it's kind of like you're shifting tense here. So I think I'd clarify this. Because of this need, as humans, we idolize the physically elite and harness their strength to wage wars. Thus, how about instead of idea, we can say need. Need for the warrior was born. And I wouldn't put a semicolon here. Remember, you use a semicolon when the two sentences are ideas you just don't want to separate by a period. A warrior, in my opinion, is the best of the best on and off the battlefield. These are run-on sentences. The medieval knight exudes this concept and has proved it time and again. Now, we know at this point, or we can assume, that the focus is going to be on a medieval knight, but we don't really know how or what's going to happen. What, as readers, we're looking for what's going to, what's the writer going to tell us next. So here we don't really know, we're just kind of guessing. Exudes this concept, so maybe the reader's going to tell us about how the knight exudes this concept. I guess the concept of the best on and off the battlefield, but that's kind of general and has proved it time and time again, so I guess we're going to get examples of how the warrior has proved being best. But something here, and that's not to say that your thesis sentence or your main sentence, your main argument has to always be at the end of the first paragraph, but by this point in time, the reader needs to know kind of what's going on and have a better, more specific explanation of what's going to come. Okay, now let me go back up here and do a couple of logistical formatting things. Man is separated from animals because we think cognitively. I'd put a comma there. But all the cognitive thinking in the world will never rid man of the basic need to survive. Survival has been and will forever be a necessary instinct, because without it the human species will cease to exist in the struggle for survival. So there's the quote. Now, remember your in-text citations. This is what tells the reader where to look on your reference page to know which source the information came from. So this has got Charles Darwin quotes. So when I go down and look at the reference page, I should see something that says Charles Darwin quotes. Okay. Whoops. Come back. Okay, there it is. Okay, so that is there. Okay. 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 Now the next paragraph, the origin of the word not. Okay. Now we're kind of getting into kind of a history lesson, and I just wanted to caution all of you as you put forth your argument. Remember, your argument is to tell why your warrior would win the battle. So here we want to know, why would a knight win a battle in a contest? So while this is, this right here is interesting information, it's not really, to me, focused on why a knight would win. Let's see. Now let's look. Okay, here's another in-text citation. Okay, now here's a problem. The period's here. Remember, the period's got to go after the in-text citation, because this is telling us where this information came from. If I put a period here, I'm separating that. So I need this to be inside the period because it all goes together. Okay, now this says steps to knighthood. Now if I go down, I should see something that says steps to knighthood. And remember, it's when I look on the reference page, it's the first words I'm looking for. Okay, so steps to, and your reference list should be in alphabetical order. So this is F, so steps to knighthood should be right here. and you can see it's not there. Okay, and we've got things here starting with A, and then we've got J, and then we've got A. This one's not in alphabetical order, and it should be. And so the Charles Darwin quote, see, this would be C. So this would be, you'd have all your A's and then your C. Now, the steps to knighthood is right here. However, I have to have this in my in-text citation. This Alchin, or however you say it. Now notice there's several Alchins here. When you've got more than one that's the same, see, if I just put Alchin, my reader's not going to know which one, so I'm not going to put steps to knighthood, but I'm going to put steps. So if I go back, and remember, if you're using a book or a journal, you'd put the page number and the year. If you have a year, you'd put the year. This one doesn't have a year. So here, I've got to do Alchin. And then I'm just going to do steps. Now, the other thing is, however the information is formatted on the reference page, it's got to be formatted the same here. Because a book is a book no matter where you talk about it. So if you talk about a book title and you italicize a book title, you're always going to italicize the book title. I think this is a web page, and so I'm going to italicize it because on the reference page it's italicized because it should be italicized because it is the name of a major source. Okay, so this paragraph talks about kind of the history of a knight growing up, and here again, that's not really showing how a knight would win a battle. Here we start to talk a little bit about weapons. Weapons is very important, but just the fact that a knight uses a weapon is not going to tell us how a knight would win. And it looks like here the next paragraph gets more into weapons. But we're talking about horseback, 40 pounds of armor. Okay, now here are some things that horseback and 40 pounds of armor, that those kinds of things would help you win a battle. But they're just kind of stuck in here again with, kind of like some of the history part. So to help the reader, we would want to, in our own words, say, when knights went into battle, they usually fought on horseback, which would give you an advantage. Then maybe talk about, what are the advantages to fighting on horseback. You might even find another source that talks about fighting on horseback. Then another advantage the warrior has is they would wear 40 pounds of armor and carry a lance or a spear. And some of the horses had armor. And instead of saying what a sight, this is more of a descriptive, kind of like telling a story, but, talk more about how these things are going to, cause you to win a battle. Did the warrior, what's the advantage of, carrying a spear and being on a horse, and, if someone's, charging at you and they're walking or they're on a horse, or, how is this advantageous in a battle? Okay, now we get a little bit more into swords. Okay, on one side, which was perfect when facing an adversary that was wearing everyday clothing. As the battle war evolves, so the knight's sword. Okay, here's Jartis. We did see that in the reference list, so that's right. But here again, remember the period goes at the end. And there's still a lot of run-on sentences as battle where evolved so that the knight's sword, period, the blade became longer and heavier, they were double-edged and the tip came to a short point, which was perfect for puncturing through armor. So now there's an example of, would that help a warrior win, or, what's the advantage there? Because the warrior's got armor on, so their armor could be punctured as well. So, there's probably some advantages and disadvantages. The mace is especially deadly. It could crush a skull. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now there's knight's weapons. Okay, let's see if we see that one on the list, on the reference list. Okay, see, I don't see anything that starts with a K, because remember, whatever's in the parentheses, those are the words I should see first. It's got to be one of these words that's listed first. So it's going to be, okay, here it's another Alkin thing. So if I go back up, okay, I'm going to put Alkin. And I'm just going to put knots because that's all the reader needs to know which one to look at. And I think knots was italicized, but remember, whatever it is on the reference page, you're going to do it the same way, because like I said, it's going to be the same kind of title here as it was, on the reference list. Okay, knots were introduced to history. Again, this kind of looks like just historical stuff about battles that were fought, but I don't see the connection here about how that shows that the knight would win a battle. What are the advantages? Maybe it's that their experience in battles and in wars and what that gave them, or the training they went through for wars. I don't know, but this is more just historical. Okay, now let's look at the reference page real quick. You guys are making huge progress with the reference pages and getting your sources right. And APA is not easy to do, so okay. Now, like I said earlier, whatever the first words here, your list should be not capitalized, alphabetized based on whatever these first words are. Okay, okay, this one looks pretty good. Now here, this would be moved, because remember, so that would mean, remember we had steps in the parenthetical reference, so that would need to be changed now. You'd have Alkin, comma, and then you'd have middle. Because remember, if this is the name of the web page and this is the name of the website, which is what I'm assuming, this is the name of the page on the website or the section or the article remember the smaller thing comes first and then the bigger thing, and then the bigger thing is italicized, so she's got that correct. And Middle Ages, we're going to capitalize both of those because that's a proper noun. Same thing here. This needs to be moved over here. And so this one, steps to knighthood, Middle Ages knights, and knights weapons. Okay, so you know what? I think, now that I look at this, I think this should be here. And I think the mistake is that this should not be italicized because this is the smaller. It looks like to me that these are the pages and this is the name of the website. So I'm going to italicize that. Yeah, and see if you look here in the URL. So that's the problem. Okay, and then these things, remember on your titles, you're not going to capitalize all the words. So here, this would not be italicized. This would be italicized. And the important words capitalized. Okay. Let's see. Here, arms and armor. The armor wouldn't be. Remember, and unless you're doing a journal, you're not going to capitalize all of the words. So here, were and Knights Templar. Knights Templar would be capitalized because it's a proper noun, but were would not be. Let's see. But overall, it looks pretty good. So get everything in alphabetical order, and then work on these issues, and they are hard. Keep asking me if you get confused on something. But this is very good for a first draft. I mean, like I said at the beginning, it's common for you to be writing the things you've read and the things that make sense to you, but think now as you go into the second draft, how can you organize this information and talk about it in a way that it will show the reader how your warrior would win a battle. Remember, that's what you want to focus on. Okay, so I wanted to thank Lauren again for letting me use her paper, and you guys keep doing a really good job on this. Won't be too long, and we will be finishing up with your papers and finishing up with the semester, and let me know if you have any questions. And remember that as you choose who you're going to be battling against, it's got to be somebody in the class. So you've got to choose a warrior that somebody's writing about in the class. And let me also encourage you that when you add your part in draft 2 about the other warrior, don't necessarily just automatically think, well, you're just going to add that after, you're just going to add that to what you have here. Like, this is your first part, and that's going to be your second part. That may work in some instances, but, think about how you can incorporate that throughout your whole paper. So you may need to move things around a little bit, because remember, you want it to make sense to the reader. You're not just putting it in there because I said to put it in there. Your whole paper's got to flow in terms of how your points are going to show whether your warrior would win or not. So, think about how you're going to organize your paper. It's not just write about your warrior and then write about, the person you're fighting. You might have to connect things and move things around. So think about that and don't limit yourself. I hope this helped, and if there's something that comes up, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer any questions or try to provide more info. And you guys keep doing a great job. Thanks.